Morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. Welcome to Dreamy Dreamland with Sensei Al Bob. I am your sensei, your griot, here to tell you a story. So, what's next? What's going on? Oh, you know, things seem so strange. War, but we've been in never ending war. Well, in the United States, anyway, since Christopher Columbus got here. First we had to tamp down the indigenous people. Then we had to, you know, enslave the enslaved, which wasn't just Africans. It was the Irish, it was the Italians, it was whoever, right? And the only people who had freedom, and what is freedom, um, were the rich white male. You read the Constitution, a person had rights that were given to them by God for white, rich, landed men, people who had no money, had no land, had no power. Their wives, the rich men, their wives, they were slaves. They had no rights. They couldn't own anything. They had no freedom. They couldn't say anything. They couldn't do anything. Men could do whatever the heck they wanted. So, you know, here we are, and we think we are so enlightened, so evolved. We don't even know our history. We don't know where we came from or what we are. But we are not our bodies. You know, we are not our bodies. You know, we're not even our soul. You know, to read the Bible that people tout, and the Bible is like you buy a car, you get an owner's manual. The Bible is just an owner's manual, right? It's as my sister said to me last night. It's like the best self-help book there is, and it is. If you read it that way, and not as a prescription of laws that you have to follow. Um, that's what it is. It's an owner's manual. It's a self help thing. I mean, especially the New Testament, because it's Jesus is portrayed telling parables, right? And in the Old Testament, it's more like a lineup of stories from the old days. That it's like the Oogie Boogie night night story you tell a kid, to go to sleep, and don't bother me after I walk out the room, Um, and God is this wrathful, mean creature that's wiping out people and just causing floods and turning people into salt. No, love is God. God, is love in your heart. Hello, Jane, sweetie. Good morning. Uh, good, yeah. And it is every morning I wake up. People go on and on about how they suffer and how mean and terrible and how blah 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 their life is, and it's so terrible. It's my parents' fault. They it's and I keep telling folk who keep going on about this that it's a waste of time. Plus, what it does, it enables the devil, boo 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 boo, the devil, Satan, Beelzebub, whatever you want to call it, is an energetic, right? And it can't make you do anything. It doesn't cause the wars, doesn't cause the famine, doesn't cause this, doesn't cause. We do, right? And I have been contemplating this idea that the only real dynamic, it isn't a war between good and evil, God and the devil. No, there's only one thing that exists, and that is love, right? But there's conditional love and unconditional love, right? And conditional love is the thing that starts wars. A good example is the war in Ukraine. The Ukrainians, after being, having a history with Russia to the point that folks in Russia think that Ukraine is Russia, that they shouldn't be able to be a separate country. No, they have a history. They are, joined at the hip with Russia, but they are a separate entity, just like the other 57 states in uh, Russia have their own, the Kazakhstani guys, people, people all over the place, and they are very different. Back in the Soviet Union, when it's the Union of Soviet Republics, it was all these separate countries: Lithuania, Poland, you know, Romania, and et al. And they were just, rolled into this empire. That empire doesn't exist, and it never really did, right? It was just an extension. We have one thing: we have a unipolar corporate state. It's fascist, right? And if you read, um, you know, the historical references um, from Sumeria and Babylon, that's us, right? And they talk a good deal. So, say with the Old Testament, you go to the Torah, they talk about the Anunnaki, gods that came from the sky. Sounds a lot like aliens. So things seem so whack right now. They're like, it's the worst it's ever been. No, oh, crime is so terrible. No, when when New York City went bankrupt in the 70s, and they fired half the police. Like one day there were 30,000 cops. The next day there was only 15. Right. So no, it was like there was no law. And in my little neighborhood in the South Bronx, you know, if I hadn't been there for so long and people hadn't known me, they'd fucking kill me. Oh, who's this white guy? Bang! In my neighborhood, everyone had a gun, and every week 5, 6 people died just in my neighborhood. Like 6 blocks this way, 6 blocks away. You know, every week 5 people died. So it's like, really? So today it's so terrible. No. And the folks who don't want guns, the gun folk are right. The guns don't kill people. People kill. And the majority of the death by guns are people who off themselves. And so I ask you, what country per capita has more guns than any other place? Well, two countries that have more guns per capita is Switzerland and Sweden, because both have everybody in those countries, man or woman, in the last, since World War II, have to serve in the military, right? And at 16, summertime comes, instead of romping around at the beach, they go have basic training. And they get basic trained, and then at a certain point, they have a ceremony where everyone gets their gun. They get a long gun, like way nastier than AR, and an automatic pistol, like a Glock. It's not a Glock. They make their own guns, and they're quite nice, and they're quite good. Sweden has quite the weapons industry. Saab makes a fighter as good as anything we make, right? So they are well armed, and that's why nobody protects, goes after them. Now the Second Amendment in America was, just to arm white slave owners, and their militia was their own private armies to keep the blacks in power. In the 1840s, Mississippi made $4 billion in profit off of King Cotton. Right? Then $4 billion of their money. So $4 billion in 1840 would be like $1 trillion today, right? So they 90,000 guys, white guys, they wanted to control that. So they weren't joining any republic unless they could control what they wanted to control. So that's the Second Amendment. That's why it's there. It's not for you to have a gun. That wasn't the idea. You weren't supposed to have a gun. So now everybody and his brother's got a gun, and you know, but that's, but in Sweden, everybody has a gun. They're given a gun. They're given, two guns, long gun, pistol, and they have it for life. And that number is stuck with them. So if that gun does a crime, they come looking for you, right? So so that's why they don't have lots of shootings of people. I mean, Sweden, they do have a lot of people offing themselves, but it's still not, you know, um, as much as we do because they're relatively happy because they don't really worry. I mean, every we spend more money on healthcare than any other country, you know, and yet we are like 48th on the list. Their countries, Cuba is number 7 because they realize if they keep everyone healthy, everyone will be kind of happy and can be satisfied, not satisfied, but at least put up with, um, what they have there. Most of that comes, every like again, guys, we live in a unipolar world. There's one power structure. It's not like communism against capitalism. It's not no. Uh, We live in a fascist state. And in 1870 something, um, I think it was 1876, they passed a law that gave corporations the constitutional right to be a individual, be a citizen, to be, have everything the Constitution says you can have and more. When you drive around and you see incorporated village, incorporated city, incorporated state, well, the United States isn't incorporated. That's what the D.C. is. The District of Columbia is the corporate headquarters of the unipolar world in the United States, and that's where the government is. That's where the military is, and that's where the power is. But the power is definitely decentralized because of a thing called COG. You know, 1947 we had the this military, the National Security Act, which changed America forever. Turned it into we were a fascist state. Now we're codifying it, right? And it put us. I mean, we're always under admiralty law. We really, and we're a country of laws. Well, we're not. You know, all these legislators, who are making little kids, who don't, you know, transgender. It's like humans are a very fluid, gendered species. You know, just from the Bible. Where was Eve taken from? Adam's rib. Come on. So humans are on a scale. Men, women, and then everybody in between is somewhere here and there, and that's where you get gays, and that's where you get the LGBTQ MOUSE. It's the dynamic of love, meaning we're supposed to like cut everyone some freaking slack, and we don't because you want to. I had some friends in a restaurant the other day, uh, and well, they were telling me that they were just talking, and this person who was eating in the restaurant came over to them and said, "Do you believe in Jesus?" You know, and they said, "What?" And this person said, "Well, you're going to hell. If you don't believe what I believe, you're going to hell." And that's literally what they said. If you don't believe what I believe, you're going to hell. Well, that's not truth. That's not. It's not anything except fear, right? And so here we are in a country that's been wound up like a spring, and it's going to go boing. And the thing that's really going to set people off, and I keep, as of May 18th, and that was my year 4 of doing this, right? And as um, Buddy said, you know, it's obvious I'm doing a good job because I'm being kept on the farm, meaning they're not blocking me, they're not fighting me, they're not all the different platforms that, it's just that I'm kept below 400, below 500, because once I go over 500, I go into another algorithm zone where more people would see me, they come up, right? And, and so I'm kept, somewhere between, 499 and 579. It's, just been bing, bing, bing. So the cadre's there, so it's quality over quantity. And what's important is that you lead your life in love's co-creation, right? Not some church or religion or book or anything, but what is love's co-creation? God is love. I don't like using the word God because when you take it apart and see where its derivation comes from, go into the Hebrew and then go into Latin, Hebrew, you know, Babylonian, Aramaic, Sumerian. God was this character called Gob, who basically only wanted gold. That's the golden rule. Who has the gold rules, right? And so all our Christian, all of the the three religions, Hebrew, Christianity, and Islam, are basically the same religion. And I would love to see some Christians pray 5 times a day. When I lived in the Mid East and in Islamic communities, I'm not Islam, but when the call to prayer, I'm a prayerful guy. When the call for prayer would come, I would go to the mosque, and go in and pray. And when I would be in a new town, that's one of the things I did. I would go to the coffee shop, I would go to the mosque, and depending on what country it was, I would check out the political structure by first finding the artists, right? And that was a good doorway into the political structure. And then by doing that, I would see who was watching those guys, and that was the secret police. So, you could check that out. When I lived when I visited Syria, that was my experience, right? And when I visited Egypt, and I was there for about a month in the Valley of Kings, and I was in that little town that services the pyramids and the tourists and the guys who study the pyramids and all that. I was brought there by this crew that wanted me to look at the stuff they were digging up, but I wasn't in the hole with a brush, and yeah, it was hot, dusty, lots of bugs, ick, lots of sun. But they would, and my boss who brought me there, he didn't want me to go. He wanted me to stay at the Holiday Inn, in the air conditioning by the pool, drinking cocktails and just having a good time. And he would come every other day because he wanted to go into his room in the Holiday Inn and take a shower and have a cocktail. And anyway, and he would come with a box or two, a suitcase or two of artifacts, and he would take them out one at a time. Put out a nice little piece of cloth, put it on there, and said, "What do you think that is?" And I was his blank slate, right? And pretty much in my scholarly career, that's what I was. I was a blank slate. I was well educated. I knew I was enumerated on everyone's opinion, but I didn't believe anything. But I had this intuition, um, and I basically had an open mind towards any direction, right? And I would start the conversation, and the people in charge would be there, and the other one or two people who had an open mind, who weren't scholastics, who weren't just driven by the book, um, would we'd have and that's what Joe Rogan does. Well, Joe Rogan's so popular is that he doesn't call himself an expert. All these other you know um, you legacy media companies, call themselves experts. We have all these fact checkers and we're giving you fair and balanced and blah, blah, blah. No, they're there to do two things: make money. So news has been turned into entertainment, into a football game, or into a soap opera, or into, right? And the other thing is to generate a belief structure, right? And so that's what we have. And so what's next? Well, you look at things that are so whack, and the media leans in. I mean, every day there's a mass shooting. Yeah, every day there is a mass shooting. you know, so I mean, there's a place near Hampton uh, roads that it's like all the roads go into it, and there's a coffee shop on the corner. I used to sit there, and you know, there would be people who go to a stop sign because there was no light; it was just a stop sign. And the main road had no stop sign, right? Not even a yield. People would come zipping through. And the other three or four roads that crossed it, I mean, people would stop, and there were stop signs, and they'd look and they'd wait, and they'd go. And there'd always be somebody who would, there was no traffic coming, and they'd still be like, ah, and the cars would back up, and people would, and then somebody get mad, and I didn't live there, but I, had business around there. Although I had a number of clients who I would go and do projects for, so I would, go there. In the 10 years that I worked for the Desperate Lawyers, I went to Hampton Roads and Northern Virginia a number of times a year. Right, I had a number of clients. I would, and there was this coffee shop, had nice Wi-Fi, had this really, I mean, it was like nice restaurant, and I guess it must have been a gas station or the architect did it, but it had big garage doors that would open. So the whole side of the building went out to this beautiful patio that went out into the road. So, and they had an awning so the sun wouldn't barbecue you, and it had air conditioning blowing from inside out through those big open doors. And they had this little misty thing. So in the summertime, when it was really ridiculous hot, you were like magically comfortable, right? And there was always somebody interesting to have a conversation. And there was this circus of this road right in front of you. And like I said, I didn't live there and I wasn't always there, but I was there enough to realize that this probably happened every day. And if I stayed there long enough, some guy would get out of his car and grab whoever couldn't, get through the thing and scream at him and push him around. And that if that person had a gun, they'd shoot the guy. And if the guy who got out was, nuts enough and had a gun, he'd shoot the other. I mean, there was shootings there probably once a day, if not four times a day, right? Because if I'm there once or twice a year and that happens when I'm sitting there having a cup of coffee, then you know that it happens all the time. So what it isn't the gun, it's that we have been wound up as a people. And we have been wound up. There was always the end, oh, the only good Indian's a dead one. Well, they were here before us, and there were 600 million indigenous people in North and South America, right? And we murdered that many, right? We, obliterated whole peoples, right? But, when I lived with the Aborigines of the Wallumacherry in Australia, they were, they showed me that they were, dimensional. Well, they were, they embodied the dynamic of they were spirit beings living in an avatar, right? They're the ones who kept calling themselves avatars in their own language. And when I was in South America, and I went up the Amazon, and I, was sent, it was just me. I didn't go as a team. I was the expendable, and I was sent up there. And yeah, they outfitted me pretty good, and they tried to make sure I survived because I wanted to know what I saw. And I went all the way up there until I bumped into a tribe of people who had never seen a white guy. Meaning, I went up the Amazon until it was like a little stream, and I would be brought up. Right, first I was in a big yacht, then I was in a big speedboat, and then I was in other speedboats, and the boats got smaller and smaller, and then canoes, and then but the last guy who left me off at a place before the folks who came with a grass skirt and bones in their nose, you know, he had a "I love New York" T-shirt, right? But he was as he was cousins to those guys. He had not seen those guys. He did not hang out with those guys, but he knew they were up there, and I was sent into them. And and the Amazon went right to the edge. Meaning there was no, as we went, there were like little towns, little this, and I got less and less to the point where the jungle was right there, right? And he let me off at this little place with a little bit of sand where he could pull his canoe up to, and you know, he went out into the woods and made a big pile of wood. He started a fire, and he didn't speak, he didn't speak English, he didn't speak Spanish, he didn't speak Portuguese, right? He spoke his native tongue, but he had enough Portuguese thrown in there for me to understand don't let that fire go out until, I will be back here, in 4 days. If someone hasn't come to find you, and you can get in a canoe, or I'll bring you some more provisions and go get you more wood, and you can stay here unless you want to get the heck out. So, I mean, that was his instruction. So he left me there, and less than 24 hours I was there, and the natives, this tribe, came out of the woods. They weren't there, and then they were right there. There was no rustling. There was no, and the noise of the animals didn't quiet down. It's like, if I had walked through the woods, right? And I was there for about a day, and I got up and I looked around, and there was no path anywhere. It's like there's this little bit of sand and the jungle, and there was no path. And like at night, I'd kind of nod out. Fire would still be going, but not raging. When I would kind of wake up, you could see all the eyes around me of animals looking at me. But anyway, that crew I stayed with for almost 3 months, and they knew what was. They had never seen white people. They never listened to CNN or Fox, or they have no access to anything other than nature, right? Yet they knew everything, right? And they knew it better than any other human beings I had ever seen. Now, these guys were like way infinitely more evolved than we were, because they were totally, um, in balance with nature. They had no technology. They had little bows and arrows, and they had little blowguns, and that was about it. And all they used that for, not as a weapon against some other tribe, they used it to, knock down an animal to have for dinner. But mostly they ate the bounty from the forest, right? And so they taught, we would go into state, and that's when we could communicate. When I said, I said, I can't, I really can't. There was no point of language. They had a language, and they had a pictorial written language, and which anthropologists constantly say, "Oh, these people have no written language. That's why they're so inferior to us." And anthropology is just a discipline to show that white men are superior to everybody else. That's what anthropology was designed to do. So anyway, um, what's coming next? The next thing coming, and I keep saying so. Like I said, I've been doing this for 4 years. May 18th was my celebration of 4 years, and here we are in June. So we're clicking into our 5th year, and I don't know anything. I don't believe a word I say, but my insight to see things tells me that we are at a period where the unipolar corporate state, fascist corporate state, needs to rebrand itself, right? And so we have all these movies about Star Trek and the Federation and aliens and blah blah blah. Well, that's what's coming down the pike. I would say by Halloween, but I'm really thinking 4th of July, which is just right around the corner. Here it is, June 6th or 7th. So less than a month, I expect the aliens to land, on the front lawn. I mean, I worked at the UN, and it's like right on Second Avenue, big buildings, and they have a beautiful. You come in the main gate, you go up these steps, and they have a beautiful garden, right? And there's a place. I mean, big space, probably the size of a football field. That's a beautiful lawn. That's all it is. But there's gardens everywhere else, trees, and flowers, beautiful gardens. But there's a big, you know, meadow, right? And it's not a meadowy meadow like in Central Park, but it's like football field of really good green. It looks like it was designed for the flying saucer to land there, right? Because there's this big, lawn and this big, wide. Um, it's not an avenue; cars don't drive on it, but path. But it's like an avenue. It's like 100 feet wide, and it has the same. The United Nations is this. It's like the monolith from 2001, and the windows are kind of black, but on the sides of the building they have this very strange. It's not per se a. It's a manufactured um, substance, and it's crystalline, right? They crushed up crystals, from different rocks, and manufactured these, like tiles, and they put them on the sides. And this path is that. So as you walk on the path, the sun hits it, and it's like gleaming from different angles. It's like quite amazing. So theatrically, this football field, flying saucer lands, this gleaming path that the aliens can, and it takes you right to the General Assembly building. The General Assembly building is another building. There's a big UN building that looks like a monolith, and then below it there's this thing that looks like a flying saucer. That is the General Assembly, big, big auditorium, holds thousands of people, and you know it looks like it was designed for the aliens to land and be able to walk like gods into the General Assembly and to speak to the assembled humans from different countries and cultures, and they can tell them what's going on. And I would say this year, 2022, is probably going to be the year that happens. But I can't tell you exactly when it's going to happen, but it's going to happen. That's the next big disruptor for the rebranding of the big splat. So I've been talking about the big splat for at least 3 years on every kind of level I could imagine, and just saying this is what's coming along. So um, prepare yourself to not believe what the unipolar world tells you. Go with your heart, because the way it works is God's unconditional love is in your heart, and Jesus's unconditional forgiveness is in your head. Now, we put those two names, or I use those two names. I'm not a big fan of them, but I use them because people can relate to them, right? No matter what culture you are, everyone has a God, right? Allah, Vishnu, God, everyone's and same, it's the same kind of, indigenous people call, no matter what. It's very interesting. All the different indigenous people that I live with that were like the folk, their name meant the people. The Hopi means the people, Onondaga means the people. Iroquois, the people. Mohawk, the people, right? And then there are other tribes, the people, people means also the human being, the Navajo, they're the human beings. And the Wallamanjiri, they were the human beings, right? So it's very interesting to that fact that we are all one relations, the closer you get to indigenous folk, they realize that everybody is everybody. There is no race. There's just Homo sapiens sapien. There is no Chinese Homo sapiens sapien. No Japanese. No, it's those are cultures and not do race, right? And when you put it in that context, all you're doing is setting people up to kill each other. So, that's kind of where we are. Let's see what people are saying. So let's see. Janie Poo, Egypt, Amazon, World Traveler Awareness. Yep, we're all immigrants. Yep. And that is what actually makes America great. Not our freaking Constitution, but the fact that we are a immigrant country. And that's, we're all mutts. I'm Italian, Irish, German, indigenous, Mohawk, Iroquois, you know, uh, I'm a lot of things, So that's what makes me the guy I am, right? At least genetically. And nature and nurture. They both are important. So it's getting on. I just wanted to touch base with you. I'm gonna go off. I'm meeting some people for brunch, and then so I'm going to go to that place now. I just wanted to touch base with you, and I wanted you to think about what's going on. What's going on in your life, what's going on in your neighborhood, what's going on in your big picture. You have a big picture, you know, and so um, that's the story. I just wanted to touch base with you. You know, to John, John's my buddy, right? I sold him to school. It wasn't just, transactional. No, I realized who he was. And the real deal was the Hill wanted John to be the next person in the school, right? I had it up for sale for a year. A lot of people looked at it and they walked away. John was, he was definitely connected, right? So the first few months he was there, he was ecstatic. He couldn't, because he was feeling that energetic. And then he got into this, and this is, again, this is, what Satan does, and so, boop, 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 you and John says this, he said this 2 days ago. It's been so difficult to try to get back my kids and been all alone with very little love that you feel 100%. Okay, on that issue, or well, maybe 60%. Okay, at least I feel about 20%, So, no, he's right. I feel love 100% because I don't need another body, to feel love. I feel love from the trees. I feel love from the butterflies. I feel love because we're all our relations. I feel that, right? And he is, separated. He is his ego. He can't get out of that, and that's the issue of our culture. So that's why John is really the canary in the coal mine. He is an amazing representation of the issues that go on in humanity. Just look at him; you can see what's on. I actually was planning to go ahead and kill myself. Well, he's been saying that forever, and bought 3 huge bags of charcoal to breathe in, you know, the smoke. Hard way to kill yourself, and uh, to grill in my bathroom. Well, he probably wouldn't suffocate. He probably set the house on fire, and then bathroom with a towel under the door. I don't think so. Um, so don't assume that because I had to work out hours a day by some miracle, fasting and eating right enough to be able to work that hard at my age. He's like, 40 something. I'm 70 something. I live out in the woods, you know. I have to, go up a hill and fix the water from the spring, and I have to do this. I'm constantly, puttering around to keep things just kind of semi okay. And you know, I live on $400 a month, going to see these folks for breakfast, that's like, about 1/10 of my month, disposable income, right? So, and my body, I beat my body up, 50, almost 60 years of being an electrician, every joint. So when I wake up in the morning, I'm in screaming pain. But that's the vehicle that I use to put myself in state and pray for about an hour before I get out of bed because I can't get out of bed until I pray and meditate and go into state and like rearrange the atoms in my bottom and my body. So yeah. So I'm always in pain, but I don't take drugs, to dull it. No, I balance it up. That's what homeostasis is, right? So yeah, I can't do what I used to do when I was 40, 50, or even 60. Um, you know, I'm in a different stage. In every part of your life, you have a different stage, right? So I've been sitting around reading books and writing novels, right? Got 5 novels. I got about 15 started. I got 5 almost done. And if you want to read them, get a hold of me at the dudeawake42 at Gmail, and I will email you, what I got. As these aren't finished pieces, but I'd love to send them out to folk and have them give me feedback. And when I send people stuff, all they say is, "Oh, it's so brilliant. It's so blah 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 blah." No, 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 no. I don't want that. What I want to hear is how it made you feel, what it made you think about, how it kind of helped you or didn't help you or got you pissed off or whatever. But even my friends who are editors and publishers, um, they read the stuff and they're a little better, but still they don't give me anything. They both you say, "Well, that's pretty cool, Al," but no one's going to read this shit, because the way you write, you make the reader work as hard as you are. He says, one friend of mine said, "You're really a wordsmith." People write stuff, and it's like toothpaste. It just kind of oozes out. You make people really look at every word you write because every word in English. Spelling. What is spelling? It's a spell. I try to break the spell with what I write, right? So that's what I'm doing, right? And what people don't realize that this little YouTube, this is a shamanic ceremony. I put it out into the World Wide Web, and maybe 12 people watch it or whatever. But it doesn't matter because shamanically it goes into every atom of the internet. That's why I do this, right? So and it's in service to love's co creation. It's a vehicle for me to exercise my ability to be my best. Now, I'm a moron. I make mistakes all the time. I'm not perfect. Um, but my mistakes are a vehicle. Oh, ooh, look at that. I made that mistake. Let's take a look at that, right? So, and, a lot of people, this one guy screamed at me that I intimidated everyone. You intimidate, he had a big gun pointed at me and a gigantic tractor that he, threatened to run me. You get my way, I'm going to kill you right now. You intimidate everyone. And I'm like there with a cane. Like, I intimidate everyone. Come on, I can barely see, barely breathe, barely walk. And you're on this big tank. It was literally a tank, gigantic, you know, 4-yard front end loader, big gigantic, his backhoe is big enough that it's like a dinosaur. It rises up that its big mouth. Its big mouth to dig holes is like a yard and a half. That's a lot of dirt for one scoop. But it's long enough that if he pulled up next to a house, he could just you know, and I intimidate him, so I didn't say anything to push any of his buttons. Otherwise, it could have been it. But I tried to say, "Come on, let's talk." It was just that he needed an enemy. I was the safe enemy. He knew I had no gun. He knew I was no threat. He knew that I would try and talk to him and get him to, because I've talked to him a number of times and gotten to him. I meet people all the time. Like yesterday was quite an interesting day. I did some shopping. I was in the supermarket, and this lady helped me find what I wanted. I asked the young people, "So where's this?" They didn't even know they were working at a supermarket. They were like just looking at their screen, and but this old lady, she was actually doing some work, and I said, "Excuse me, can you give me a hand? And I wanted to get Folgers makes these very nice tea bags that, do I have one in here? Yes. It's like a tea bag, but it's coffee. Right? It's really great. You don't use a lot of coffee. And I use the same tea bag a zillion times, right? So she finds it for me. She didn't even know it existed, but she found it, and she didn't use the box. She knew where coffee was, and she looked at him, right? And so I looked at her and I talked to her, and I said, "Oh, let me look at your palm." I read her, and she was like, and I like woke her up. I turned around and there were 4 people waiting. I'm like, "Can we have a reading too? Does it cost money?" I said, "Well, you want to, I have no money, so if you want to give me a you know, an offering, you know, that's I don't say, oh, that's 1995. I just say whatever you want to give. But I didn't even do that. I just, if someone wants to offer me something, I accept it with great pleasure. Like I'm asking you now, PayPal, please. Thank you for everyone who's put something in it. You know, this month, the last 2 weeks, um, I've gotten $27. Thank you. That's the difference between the closing of my bank account and it still being open. But boy, it could use some more cash. So please, PayPal, Dude Awake 42 at Gmail. The Dude Awake 42 at Gmail. So come on. So anyway, I read all this, and they were like, and to each one, I told them things that no one ever told them. Totally, and they wanted to stay there for the rest of the day and just talk to me, right? Because I feel so good. I mean, you lifted the weight off of my. This old lady who's probably 80 years old. You just lifted this weight that I've had since I was 6 years old. She's been living with that thing for 6 years, and me in the supermarket can just tell her a few things, and she's like, so why didn't her church tell her that? Why didn't her parents tell her that? Why didn't anybody tell her that? The school, anybody? No, because all those institutions want to control you, own you, use you. So anyway, so that isn't what's next. What's next is what's been going on. All you have to do is roll back the cranky. The cranky is this thing in the old times before movies and TVs. People tell stories and they'd have pictures on the thing and they'd roll the little thing. And now the hipsters are using it and think it's really great. They like invented something. No, it's a buddy of mine. I was telling a buddy of mine, like in 1979, a lady named Beth Lapidus. Go Google her. She's a big time comedian, producer in Hollywood, blah, blah, blah. Beth Lapidus. And she got out of art school and she's trying to be a painter and all these other people. But she was funny and she could tell a story. And I told a story. And so we were the two storytellers. And she still wanted to do art. So I told her about Crankies. Right? So she made her own version. And that's what got her. That was her little hook to become famous. Right. And I did that to a ton of people. Right. And now it was their genius, their what their spirit that really made them what they was. But I would give them, just like those people in the supermarket, a few words that they were like, "Whoa," and and it put them on the path that they need to be on. And that's what Dreamy Dreamland is about. Is a vehicle for you, the observer, the artist, and the first person to wake up. You know, so and not be so angst. Like John Boy. So boop, 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 kill myself and brought 3 huge bags of blah blah blah, grill, bathroom towel. So don't assume that because I had to work hours a day by some miracle, fasting and eating and blah blah blah, hard at my age, like in his 40s. Um, and if he's 51, I don't even think he's probably 48 age and other relentless effort. I had to do 14 hours a day, or had to do 14 hours a day for the past 30 years. It's not that fun of a life. I mean, I've been working since I was 9 years old, but my grandma always said, don't work for anybody unless they need you more than you need that paycheck. Number one. Number two, don't go to work. Go to something you enjoy to do. So that's why I have so many skill sets because you know, I became a pretty successful photojournalist. And then I met Donna, and we had this pretty amazing photo studio that was quite successful. And she didn't want it to be, 8 years, and she got tired of being DNA. You know, and the first 7 years it was great because I had all these connects, and it smoothed her into this direction that she wanted to go. But then she just wanted to be done, and I loved her so much that you want whatever you want, sweetheart. Oh, it's what it is, right? Well, you can't take pictures anymore. Stop taking pictures. And I said, well, that's going to be a little hard. Being an anthropologist, I do have to kind of document. Well, then you can only use a Diana camera, which is, these shitty cameras you get at the at the carnival, you know. And so I said, okay. And then I started taking pictures with it, and you get it's like 2.25 film, so it's a large, it's larger negative than 35 millimeter. And I had a friend of mine who was, he was just an amazing printer in this color. Oh, what was that called? But it was really deadly. It was, but he was really lush. It was designed for Kodachrome film, and the prints were just so lush and Chrome, right? And so, Chrome meaning all of the colors were totally deep. And so he would take my negatives, and they had all these light flares because it's just this crappy plastic box with a plastic lens and a shutter. I mean, the really good Diana cameras, you had three settings of f-stops, but that was about it, right? And so, and it also had like you could hold the shutter open and count one, two, three, four, right? Or you could just do this, push all away, and the shutter would go click, right? So I took pictures that way. And, my friend printed them and they were beautiful. And his work, Ivan Karp was our friend. And so he would show, hey, Ivan, take a look at these. And Ivan was constantly telling me, you should just be an art, the way you bend pipe is art, just stick that on plywood and I'll sell it as art. Anyway. And I, did that, but it was so restricting. I had a good friend, John Bowman, and he was a good painter. He was schooled. He was really good painter, and he was very disciplined. And he painted, painted, painted every day. And so at a certain point, I think it was Mary Boone who was his gallery, and she sold his paintings in the '80s for 50 grand a pop. He got 50 grand for every, whether it was a little painting or a gigantic painting. You know, I mean, I guess it made a little difference, but anyway, he did that, did that, did that, and he realized because he saw other people hit, success and then wane, and and then he saw, and I would take him to parties before he hit his really sweetheart, and he was like the hot thing, and you realized that, and we were all, all of us artists in Soho slash Tribeca. I was the electrician, Jody's the plumber, Barack, not Barack, Bariah was the mason, Willie was the carpenter, and John was, a taper. He pretty much did all the stuff, not electric or plumbing, but everything else, right? He was almost our helper, but he wasn't. He was, and because he was really disciplined and he was really, Willie smoked a lot of cigarettes, and but the rest of us were pretty. Once we did it, we were doing it, right? Um, and Willie was a great carpenter, so he got to anyway. Everyone succeeded as an artist or whatever they were doing on some level, and I had all I was involved in activism. I was anthropology, photography, painting, sculpting, theater, lighting, you name it, I was doing it, and I was successful at all of them, right? And I could have like I got into Naboth and IATSE. Those are the two big, movie and theater, um, you know, technical unions, right? Because Grandpa Stoll, was head of Local 3, and that was the king of unions. And I got guys who were in 3 who were in those other ones. Once I got into Local 3s, I was a rep, right? I went from being an apprentice to a journeyman in less than 2 weeks. It usually takes like 5 years, right? And then I went from journeyman to a master in less than a year, right? And then as a master, I was, a rep, right? And all the guys, because I had long hair, who gave me a hard time when I worked on the World Trade Center, a year or two later, I had, basically shaved my head, and because I was living in abandoned buildings, and I'd wake up with bugs, and if you have long hair, so they all had long hair, and I had short hair. And I was the rep, and oh, I want you to do this, blah blah blah. I said, remember when you like hung me up the side of the building because I had long hair, and you screaming at me as being a hippie and blah. Oh, I'm so sorry. I said, sorry is not my, second wife would always say, sorry is not good enough. And she'd like really like make you, oh my God, she's going to kill me. And that's why I was her perfect husband, because I never did anything that I was sorry for. And she was a great teacher of mine, right? To like be consciously aware, because she'd eat you alive. And so this is where we are. You have to be conscious aware. You have to be conscious intent on what you're doing. So that means when you're conscious intent in what you're doing, you don't do stuff you don't want to do. Just like, oh, it's so hard. No, you do what you want to do, and then you succeed at it. And I mean, the Beatles, they didn't say, oh, this is hard. No, they loved everything they were doing. Everybody who's like does that. People, all the people I know, who, like Kiki Smith, she's always been an artist. Judy Rivka, always been an artist. And why they're so successful, and success is very fleeting. Um, and that's why I didn't put all my eggs in one basket. So that's why today I have all these, skill sets, and nobody seems to want them anymore, right? Everything is like this, you know? And so that's why we are heading for a very strange dynamic in a very short period of time. And so here it is 9:30ish, and I have to get on my way. So this was just the opening salvo. And Janie Poo, I'm glad to see you, that you were here. And I love you all. And remember, conscious intent I am, I know the only thing that exists is love's co-creation, and we are here to serve in every day and every way. One loves co-creation, to take the peace of the earth and make it stronger, because that's the only guy who's going to make it stronger. The only person who's going to bring peace on earth is us, right? Who's oh, it's Ed. How you doing, Ed? To put on the microscope to see what Ed says. Even with this, it's hard. Let's see. Have a great day, and I will, because of you guys. Okay. So, our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth as in heaven. Give us this day daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, and lead us to do our very best. And every day in every way, take the peace of the earth and make it stronger. I hope. Okay, gang. I'll catch you later. Do, 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 do. Beep, 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 beep.